Happy New Year. Welcome to the first episode of Connect for Health of 2026, the podcast and webinar series that helps you live a healthier, more empowered life. I am Scott Armstrong, the founder of Mental, a platform dedicated to tackling the stigma of mental health. And as always, I'm joined by my fabulous co-host, Mesa Al-Kafaji, the head of Government Affairs and Strategic Communications at Cigna Healthcare.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. 2026.
Nice
Happy
to
New
see
Year.
You too. Yes, and Happy New Year.
As you know, Connect for Health is an initiative by Cigna Healthcare, supported by Mental. And as ever, you're going to be able to ask your live questions. So if you're tuning in today, please give us your questions in the chat box. And of course, we've got the polls for you to interact with later. And if you are catching up on YouTube or on the podcast channels, remember you can get involved. Reach out to Cigna Healthcare for details of membership so you can get involved next time. Now, today's topic is a really, really powerful one to start the year. The Cigna International Health Study that Mental helped write last year showed that 18 to 24-year-olds who responded were struggling with unmanageable stress and loneliness and a lack of companionship. But how do we actually reach children before then to give them the tools so that when they grow up, they have more resilient tools? And of course, the topic of today is what the power of failure and how it can teach our children. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined by two very inspiring guests who've kicked my imposter syndrome right in. The first is Sebastian Bates, who is the founder and CEO of the Warrior Academy, and he's the founder of the Bates Foundation as well, which is a global charity focused on character education in vulnerable communities. Now, Sebastian's story is very much built on his lived experience, his childhood overcoming bullying, and today he has mentored over 50,000 families across 7 countries and has raised more than $1 million for charity and reaches millions every month with his work. And if that wasn't enough for you, we're also joined by Ryan, who is the manager of sports excellence and athlete development for Cognita Schools Middle East. And he's working within the Enrich Me program. Now, he leads sports initiative, he coaches young athletes and promotes health and well-being at Cognita Schools across the UAE. He's a highly experienced coach. And beyond that, he's a multiple Guinness World Record holder, and he's got so many. I'm not even going to try and tell you what he is. I'll let him speak for you. Lee, Sebastian, welcome to Connect for Health.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year. I'm not sure when we stop saying Happy New Year.
Exactly.
Is it that time yet? I don't know.
Well, I think we can still get them in. It's the 14th as we record. We're going live today, so I think after that,
Okay.
We're going to start. And I want to start with kind of an overview, and it's a question that we hear a lot we talk around resilience. It's a word, it's almost like a buzzword these days, which is almost like, I'm not going to say overused, but Sebastian, I'll come to you first. What is your definition of resilience? What does it actually look like? What is it?
What is resilience? Great question. I think on the surface level, resilience is your ability to cope with something in the moment, right? But I think there's another element to this. I think it's your ability to recover from something. I think, if you look at resilience as 2 parts, having the ability to cope and handle the pressure of something at the moment, but also the distance of time or the space it takes you to then be able to do it again, to repeat the same thing again or something to that degree. So it's both handling and recovering.
That's a perfect start. Follow that, Lee. I'm going to ask you for your definition of resilience.
I think similar. It's the power to keep going. It's keep going with whatever challenge you have, whether it be a match at school or a sports day or something like that. But it's also, if it doesn't go quite well, it's the resilience to wake up and go again the next day and turn up and not be afraid to be the one where it didn't go to plan and you had that bit of failure or you learnt that lesson. But it's that resilience to keep moving forward, essentially.
I'm going to surprise you and ask you what your view of resilience is. How do you think resilience shows up in your life?
Oh God. For me, it's like a work in progress because there are times when you have to kind of pivot and mind you, saying keep going, that's easier said than done. Yeah. And it's that constant check-in and that reminder, be it, I don't know, like an end goal or an objective or reminding yourself of that feeling and not wanting to go back to that feeling. So continuing that projection, as in like that trajectory and stuff. But yes, I would say, touching on both of what you had both said earlier as well, It's not easy because even as an adult, mind you, we're talking about children today.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot for us to learn as adults when it comes to aspects of being resilient. Yeah.
And thank you for being resilient and changing in the moment there and pivoting in the moment to answer that question. It was fantastic. I'm going to resist the urge to try and turn these sessions into personal therapy sessions for me, but which is true. But I think look, my childhood was very, very challenged, and we don't need to go into the details of that. But my instinct then, as a parent, is to shield my daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, from almost any kind of pain that we can. But while we celebrate the successes, we always seem to, failure is not something that we lean into with our children. It's not something we focus on. I think we just want everything to be bright and shiny all the time. And we know it can't be, but that's that instinct, as we don't want them to have our childhood. So for you, Sebastian, how important is the word failure, and how important is it for children to actually experience that and learn to come through it?
I think there's probably a lot of parents watching this. For me, parenting is this challenging balance of protection and empowerment. And it's so difficult to get right. You can lean too far towards protection and you jump in too soon. You rescue them too soon. And what you think you're doing is keeping them safe. But what you're actually doing is lowering their resilience.
Yeah.
On the flip side, you can focus too much on empowerment. You can push your kids too far, like we were talking about. You can try and get them to be competing at the highest level and everything all the time. There's so much pressure. And what you end up doing is lowering their resilience because they do something they don't want to repeat.
Right.
So that's that repetition side of things. Failure then comes in as a complete reframe. In my opinion, we need to change how we look at failure. But often, you can tell your kids this, but they need to see you doing it, right? Kids will copy more of what you do than what you say.
Yeah.
So it's all about kind of building that kind of rapport and showing them this is what resilience looks like in action.
You said you two were talking before we actually went live. What was your opinion, or what was your contribution in that conversation, Lee?
Yeah, I've been in Dubai almost 20 years now, and we were speaking about opportunity here, where the weather is always perfect. It's not a country where we need to look out the curtains and understand what we need to wear.
Yeah.
We know it's the power of saying no with failure. There's overexposure sometimes, but I think when you become a parent, society says you should know everything, but it's understanding that as a parent, you need to grow with the kids. You need to learn as you go through, because I've got two daughters. I've got a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old. They've been brought up the same. They're very close together, best of friends, but completely different. And it's that adaptability, and it's that failure where it's not nice to see. And all of my endeavors, the world record you mentioned, for every medal I have at home, there's 10 things that went wrong. And it's about categorizing. It could be, I didn't wake up, I didn't have breakfast in time. Is that a failure, or is that a lesson? And it's about evolving that. It's, especially in a competitive aspect where I'm dealing with sport a lot, it's the passion that you hate losing more than you love winning. And it's that evolvement that not everything can go right. Not every day is a dream day. Instagram is not real life. Everyone's in a rush. Everyone wants the highlight reel. But no one understands that the world's strongest man had to learn to do a push-up once. The world's fastest man had to learn to walk once. But all they see is the end product, and they just want to get there. And it's a status symbol. It's a sense of identity. And if things go wrong, people just feel a bit embarrassed, and people are laughing at them. And sometimes the wrong group, the wrong society does laugh at you and point at you and say, ha ha, told you so. And it's just about having that resilience just to keep going.
It's a little bit early for a mic drop moment, but that was pretty powerful. I started the conversation asking you to define resilience. What's your definition of failure then? Because obviously, Sebastian, there you said we need to reframe failure. So what is failure to you?
I guess failure for me would be not meeting an expectation, right? A self-prescribed expectation, or one that's been placed on you. But of course, it's funny what you said, right? You've broken some world records, lots of world records, but for every attempt, there was maybe 10 failures. And, for every, there's that kind of saying, winners fail more than losers, right? And it's one of those things where they just get so used to doing it. It just becomes a normal part of life. And I think when you're looking at failure, it's approaching that as the requirement to win or to achieve is a series of failures. But that resilience comes in of reframing that failure as something you just keep bouncing back from.
Yeah. You reminded me of that famous Michael Jordan quote where he's like, I've missed X amount of shots
Yeah.
and all that kind of thing. And
I didn't just ruin it, did I?
Pardon? No.
I didn't just steal
it's
Michael's
perfect.
quote there.
Well, it's the famous one Roger Federer said recently. It's like the amount of shots he missed. I think he only succeeded 50% of his shots, but ended up being the greatest one ever. And it's the willingness to try, and it's a journey, and it's a concept that I've had to really teach myself is don't be afraid of if it goes wrong. Just the terminology I call in my internal monologue is go until the wheels fall off, essentially like riding a bike with stabilizers, just keep going. And if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. You tried, because sometimes we have the buffer on and we squeeze the brakes a bit too much where we don't actually know what we can achieve. You have that expectation. My sport is endurance, so a lot of mine is pace and data driven, and sometimes it's just being brave enough just to go a little bit quicker, and sometimes it goes wrong, and most of the time it will, but sometimes you might just surprise yourself and go, hold on a minute, I can do this. But sometimes you hold that buffer on and you never actually know. It's like that famous meme where the guy's digging for a diamond and he's this close to getting it, but he gives up. You just don't know what's around the corner, and it just takes sometimes saying yes to an opportunity and just giving it some, not caring.
So what's really interesting for me with my background is that I've been part of and worked with incubators, startups, and the mindset of a lot of these startups is that failure is to be expected. And it's when it works out that's the pleasant surprise. So it's almost kind of like you said, Sebastian, it's like really reframing it, because the negative association with failure is, I think, outdated now. It really needs to be kind of like thrown away, because it's part of that process. You can't skip that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it almost feels like we're trying to insulate ourselves from that, whereas previous generations had to really live through those kind of dark times and learn from their mistakes.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you, Sebastian. We said in your introduction that a lot of what you do is built on your lived experience. So I'm going to ask you to go there for a bit. What was it in your life that you experienced that inspired you to do what you do today? Talk us through how that felt at the time, but also talk us through how you kind of turn that into something positive.
Yeah, so I grew up in a fairly big school. There was about 40 kids in my class, and it was very busy. But I was failing academically. We then moved schools. I was in a military family, so we moved around quite a lot. Moved to a new school. I didn't fit in at all, and I was bullied for about 4 years. Started psychological, then went to more isolation and then physical bullying. That led me down the path of martial arts.
Right.
I kind of found my confidence in martial arts, right? Built resilience through martial arts. Not immediately. It took about 6 months for the stuff I was doing to really influence my character. And I think 6 months after that, the identity was kind of shifting in me, and I started responding to the bullying in a very different way. Fast forward, 20 years from then, it's 30 years actually from then. It's now we're the largest martial arts academy in the Middle East, and I kind of look back and I'm like, when you look back, you can join up the dots, right? This is why I'm so passionate about what I do. It's when I've been working with so many parents who've come to the class with their kids, whose kids are going through bullying, who lack the ability to be resilient in the first place, because they've been victims of bullying. I see that hopelessness and helplessness in those parents' eyes that I saw in my own parents' eyes for 4 years. And the one thing I've realized about bullying is just how predictable it is. Now, there are so many schools in the UAE in particular where they say we're a bully-free school, and there's just no such thing.
Yeah.
And I'm quite vocal about that, right? You can't stomp out bullying. You can't eradicate bullying. Bullying is just a horrible part of the human condition. What we can do is equip young people to cope with it when it happens and transition through it and have the resilience to cope with it and repel it. Much like we teach kids to cross the road. We need to teach them, the drivers aren't necessarily bad people, but we need to be prepared for difficult situations like bullying in their lives. So that's how I would approach bullying with kids. And that's kind of where my story weaves into all of this.
Do you mind me asking, I was bullied at school as well. What were the tools that we were missing that allowed us to become, to be in that situation, to allow ourselves to be bullied in that way? What were we missing? What were the tools or the lessons that we'd not been taught that today you're trying to teach parents and children? That practical thing, how to actually isolate yourself or protect yourself from bullying, which is not just about being physically strong.
No, exactly. And the first thing I'd say is one of the hardest lessons, really, especially with parents whose kids are going through bullying, is the bullies aren't necessarily bad people, right? Bullying is like this negative flow of energy. And it's typical that the bully is actually going through bullying themselves and they're trying to seek some sort of power or hierarchy in their lives. And therefore they pick on victims, right? The victims of bullying are typically signaling vulnerability in some way. And so the first way that we can signal vulnerability is through our body language. 90% of our communication is nonverbal. So the way that a victim of bullying might walk into a room, put their hands in their pockets or avoid eye contact or, fidget or whatever it is, these are all signals to potential bullies. So, nonverbal communication is massive. The way that they then respond, you've got tone of voice, you've got the words they use, the way they respond when they are initially picked on in the first place makes a big difference. So there are so many steps you can take. One of the biggest things I would also say is perspective. So a lot of the reason that kids get stuck in chronic bullying is because they have rewired how they kind of see the bully in their lives as this big, scary threat. And so the first thing we do when we work with kids who are going through bullying is change the perspective to empathy and actually understanding the bully's not a bad person, they're probably going through something. I had this incredible case of a 9-year-old boy who I was working with a few years ago, and he went through 2 years of chronic bullying, and the parents didn't know what to do. They had no idea what to do. He was a strong, healthy young boy. There was no reason for him to be bullied. He was great at sports, all this sort of stuff. But every day he was picked on by the same kid in class. And I worked with him for 2 weeks, and we managed to eradicate bullying entirely from his life. And it was an amazing story. The first kind of session with him, I basically did a role-playing game where I asked him to show me what the bullying looks like. And that's a real hack for any parents watching this. If you want to understand what your child's going through, if you put it into a game, they'll actually show you. If you just ask them, what do they say or what do they do, you won't necessarily get that access. So I started to understand what he was going through, right? The bullying he was going through. I then explained to him this body language aspect. So we mixed up role-playing with body language. He would walk into the room and I would change the way that he stood, the way he spoke, this sort of stuff. And after about 20, 30 times walking in and out of the room, when I was sitting there pretending to be the bully, you could see him starting to become more confident in that situation. The next thing was understanding, where this bully might be getting this negative energy from. Once we changed that script, within 2 weeks, he went to class and he sat down with the bully and he asked him what was wrong. Why is he always so angry? Why is he so sad? He mentored his bully through the bullying.
Wow.
That's powerful.
That is very powerful.
Black belt emotional intelligence, isn't it?
Yeah. Wow.
Black belt emotional intelligence. I love that.
But just listening there, it's interesting because we put resilience on pushing away those type of altercations, right? We say, boys don't cry, just man up, whatever it may be. And obviously you said you had the conversations before.
My
but
two least favourite words in the
Yeah.
English language.
It is one of those.
Yeah.
And bullying, in my mind's eye, is just a big kid in the playground, right? But bullying is different now. It's
Online,
digital, it's keyboards, it's
Yeah.
secret, it's taking photos, it's devices. But also, not to call it bullying, when you look into sport, the snigger when you missed a shot, when you tried for that winning goal and you missed, the sniggering, it's not so much the punch. And sometimes it's the dealing with the mental fatigue of what bullying is. It's the assumption of what that actually meant, where sometimes another boy or a girl could show disappointment, but they interpret it wrong and they communicate it wrong and it's received differently. So they go, oh, they don't like me. They just laughed at me. And sometimes they're showing their disappointment, but not communicating it correctly. So now it's like understanding those narratives, and parents as well. It's the laughing, oh, he shouldn't be playing, that type of stuff, that passive aggressive bullying, so to speak. And it always is, just be a bit more resilient, just get going, just keep moving forward. And sometimes it's not about that, right?
Yeah, because I was trying to think about it from a sport perspective. I have 2 older boys, and they're like football fanatics. And I mean, as a mother, I'm just like, ooh, why do you have to say things like that? But it's almost like, yes, it's true. They've just normalized this idea of okay, it's kind of boxed within the parameters of it's on the pitch, it's on the field. It's okay to snigger, to yell, to use, obscenities and whatnot. But I know that sometimes because of that normalization, it spills into other areas of one's behavior. And that's why I'm thinking on a society level, not just kind of like from children across, because as parents, like you can normalize, it's fine to say that or respond when you're in the heat of the moment and you're, trying to get the winning goal.
Yeah. It becomes your identity, right?
Yeah.
And it's also, especially with the children we work with, is letting them know that you're always being watched, no matter where you are, and especially the upper echelon of the performance squads that we have. There could be a scout that comes along. It doesn't matter how good you are at that sport. If your attitude or how you talk to the referee or your teammates, a scout would turn around straight away and go, that's not the attitude I want. And it's just about carrying that, because me and Seb spoke before about, we don't want it to be a footballer called Timmy. We want Tim who likes to play football, does swimming, plays these sports. It's identifying the boy or the girl and saying, right, be a better human, so to speak, respectful. And then whatever you do becomes that character trait, becomes that person. It's something that I say to my daughters, as long as you're happy and kind and having fun, everything else will keep moving along, won't it?
That's really good.
I think what we're ultimately talking about here is character development, right? It's reputation is what people say and think about you. Character is what you say and think about yourself. And I think that's when no one is watching.
Yeah.
Who are you when no one's watching? And the problem with a lot of modern sports, and I'll take martial arts as an example. You look at modern MMA where it's just about fighting and this sort of stuff. They've lost that kind of ancient focus on character development, on a moral compass. Whereas some of the more traditional styles, they do have that. A lot of modern sports have lost that. But sports in general can be an incredible tool for developing character. This is why I focus on, a lot of the traditional values within character development within martial arts, because it's got that, it develops in a kid's what we call, black belt character.
Well, I mean, family is very, very strong here in the UAE, but it does feel like almost when you're talking about values and character building, that's almost something that's got lost along the way in the parenting. It's more about, yes, we'll stick the YouTube and the iPad rather than doing the hard yards as an individual yourself to try and teach character, particularly if you are insecure yourself. You ask, that's an interesting question that I've struggled with over the last sort of 3 to 4 years. Like, who am I? And if we can't answer that question as parents, how do we actually help our children do that? I wanted to just come back on something that Lee said as well, because Sebastian, you were kind of talking about that response almost in a physical environment, body language, empathizing with their bully. But as Lee was saying, a lot of the bullying these days, probably 90% of probably the bullying that's going on is actually digital. It's almost unseen. It's psychological. How do we bolster, protect, build in resilience for our kids to, resist that bombardment on social media? Not that they should be on social media before 16, but in my opinion, but how do we teach them resilience against that? Because it's more insidious and more unseen and potentially even more damaging. You can't punch back at an online troll.
I think it's, as a parent, it's building confidence within that person and how they interpret that, call it feedback, if you will. I have a daughter called Lily, a daughter called Sophia. Completely different characters. Lily, very emotional, will cry happy tears, will cry at most things, where Sophia, it could be the second child syndrome. She is bullish, she is strong, she is sassy. But at the same time, I will say to them, who are you?
Lily takes after her dad, don't you?
100%. 100%. And my wife will agree with that as well. But from bringing them up, I've said, who are you? And they will say, I'm Lily, I'm big, I'm strong and beautiful. And I think it's about building that person and for them to have a different lens on how they accept that information, right? Because I can tell Sophia not to do something and I'll tell Lily not to do something and their response is completely different. The outcome is the same, right?
Yeah, I think the issue with cyberbullying, right, is that for kids who are getting bullied in school, they've got no break from it. It's
Yes.
just this thing that is suffocating them. They don't have a moment to breathe. The second they leave that school where they are a victim of bullying, they go home and it continues.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that comes down to the parents initially to protect them from that, right? If you're giving your child a smartphone before the age of 13, you're basically inviting it in. If you are letting your child use any device which can access the outside world alone in their room, and you don't have these kind of basic rules in place, you're inviting that in. And so the first line of defense that kids have is those basic rules, right? No smartphone, or delay the smartphone as long as you can. My daughter's 8 and she's asking for it all the time because some of her friends have them. And I say, 13 plus minimum. Those rules about when you're alone with tech is really important as well. We think that we can restrict them on iPads and this sort of stuff. What's the difference between an iPad and a phone? It's just more obvious, right? An iPad can do the same stuff as a phone. The only difference is, they have to walk around with it. We can kind of see what they're up to on the screen, this sort of stuff, but they can still contact the outside world. They can download apps. They're always one step ahead of us as well.
Oh, yes.
I remember in school, we weren't allowed to do things on the computer and we'd figure it out and get past security and all this sort of stuff. Kids are smart and they're creative. But the other thing I'd say is to touch on what you said. When it comes from finding confidence within, that's exactly right, right? At the end of the day, your child's going to get a phone. They're going to be online. They're going to speak to the outside world from a device and you won't be around. Just like your child's going to go to school, someone's going to call them their name, someone's going to pick on them, you won't be there. The only thing you can really do is make sure that they derive their value of self-worth from themselves, from within, and not from the outside world. If you're giving your daughter a phone when she's a teenager, and she's posting a picture and she's saying to the world, who am I? How valuable am I? What's my worth? That's very different to asking herself.
Yeah.
Powerful. Please, particularly if you're a parent of a young child who's going through all of this, get your questions in. Sebastian and Lee here, very experienced. We'll get Lee the opportunity to talk about all his world records in a bit. But please lean in. Post the questions in the chat box. It's also poll time, so it is time for you to get involved. Have the confidence to get involved. And we're asking you a question today. Our first poll today is, how do you usually react when your child fails at something important to them? And the options are, I try to fix the problem for them, which is really, really easy to fall into. I comfort them and move on quickly. I encourage them to reflect and try again. I struggle to know what to say. I avoid talking about failure altogether. So please, let's see what you are thinking. What's your usual go-to when your child fails at something that's particularly important to them? Mesa, as a parent, what do you think?
Yeah, it's so funny because there was an incident yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So my middle child, he's applying to go to university to the Netherlands. And yes, because he doesn't want to be with his brother in the UK. So basically, he was getting nowhere. It was just some kind of like bureaucracy and back and forth. But me being, the problem solver, and I wanted to take that off him, I struggled to remind myself that this is how he learns. This is how he takes that first step. And I think he was just throwing toys out of the pram because he was like, you don't care. And I was like, no, go for a walk, come back, think about how to word that email and send that email. I'm not going to do that for you. But it was that idea of I had to stop coming to the rescue. I had to stop minimizing that exposure to pain because he was frustrated.
Your mum,
yeah,
and you don't know anything, right?
That too.
That's exactly it, right? I'm a parent and a coach, so I'll come home and some of the children that I'm lucky enough to work with and trusted by the parents to work with, all the parents will come to me and say they really listen to you. They really hold on to your words. They'll come home, they'll go to bed on time, they'll eat good food. I'm like, my kids don't do that.
Yeah.
And they'll come home and go, my teacher told me that if I go to bed on time, I'll grow big and strong. I'm like, Dad's been trying to tell you that for the last 10 years. So it's understanding that. Yeah. Sometimes you need that third party because mum and dad are just nagging.
And we're not cool enough to give advice. Absolutely. No. Well, it seems like we actually have a reasonably enlightened audience today, as we always do. Thank you for getting involved in the. I'm probably the least charming I've ever been there. The big answer there is I encourage them to reflect and try again. 92.5%. That feels like that's almost the right answer to that question. Yeah. Whereas I am definitely one of the 2.5 that said I try to fix the problem for them, or comfort them and move on quickly. So your answer to that poll of those options is encouraging them to reflect and try again. Is that kind of like the way to go?
how do we deal with failure to encourage and reflect and try again? Yes, I think so. I think that there's a window of opportunity, right? And it's almost like the golden moment. If you look at failure or success as an opportunity to learn, then there is this golden moment that that kind of window opportunity where you can teach them the most in the shortest amount of time. And that is how they respond to that feeling, that energy. When your child succeeds at something, it's your chance to reinforce that so they want to do it again. When they fail at something, it's your chance to teach them coping mechanisms, how to deal with pressure, how to regulate their nervous system afterwards, how to reposition their mindset around it, and how to bounce back to reduce that amount of time from going through something difficult, failing, and repeating the event. So exactly right, yeah.
I'm going to break that down in a little bit further and ask you to tell us what that actually looks like. But before we do that, and we'll come on to that a little bit later, we've got some questions coming in. Love it. Thank you for leaning in. Thank you for getting involved, and some pretty powerful questions here. The first one, particularly here in the UAE, I think is a great one. Balak Krishna, thank you very much for your question. What's the best advice for both working parents who get very little time to spend during the weekdays in terms of helping their children, which I think will be a common situation for so many parents here?
Yeah, for me, it's booking non-negotiable quality time. So I got an hour walk every morning on my own. I do a lot of my work while I walk and that sort of stuff. I come back and my son's got ADHD. I regulate his nervous system by walking with him for 20 minutes after that walk. So I make sure every single morning, I've got that quality time with him. It sets him up for a good day, lets off some energy, make sure that he's calm and ready for the day, right? My daughter, on the other hand, it's just sitting with her while she reads. She doesn't, it's not so much she needs to be physical. She just needs to be there for 10, 15 minutes in the evening. I can sit with her while she reads a book.
That's true.
That quality time, so much of the time as parents, we think that we need to be in their lives correcting them all the time. And then what happens is, by the time they're teenagers, they push us away because we're the judge, we're the coach, we're correcting them. Instead, what if we switch the focus to just connecting with them? If our whole energy and our focus and that non-negotiable time was just connection time, building up that trust, non-judgmental trust, I think you get a much better result doing that.
Lee, I'm going to bring you in on that one as well.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's, from my experience, as I've become a parent with my training for stuff, time has become more valuable. So in my teenage years, I could spend 3 hours in the gym and go back down for a smoothie and come back up. But now if I have an hour, I have to make use of that hour. It's the same as time with the kids. And most of the time in Dubai, we spoke about before we came on air, traffic is quite prevalent at the moment in the UAE. Time in the car with kids is precious time.
I kind of love it, actually, the school drop-off,
And it's Damien Hughes, who obviously is famous for the High Performance podcast. He speaks about asking better questions. How was your day? Fine. Sometimes they could be looking at a device. Sometimes it's just about, tell me the best thing. Tell me the thing that went wrong.
Yeah.
And it's about showing that vulnerability where they can just look at things from different sides, right? And when you are spending time with them, it doesn't have to be going to soft play. It doesn't have to be big adventures. It can be the simplicity of just having a chat, spending time with them, being in their presence, that soulful time in the same room, obviously. And it's down to the parent not to get distracted and to pay attention, because sometimes parents tend to do stuff on the weekend because they're bored. Come on, kids, let's go out. And most of the time the kids just go, I just want to play with my toys. I need to relax. I've been busy. And it's allowing parents to understand that they need to occupy themselves and the kids will be absolutely fine.
I love the one where we tell them they're not allowed on their screens while we're doom scrolling, which always seems like modelling the wrong thing. We've got a raft of questions coming in, so I'll actually stay with the questions if we don't mind for a second. Michelle's got a good one, which I think you'll resonate with as well, Mesa. How do we discipline teenagers? I've gone through the teenage years with my son already, and my daughter's 10, so she'll be there soon. How do we discipline teenagers, without being controlling or over strict and still respecting their newfound privacy and freedom while continuing to try and maintain a boundary in some ways? That's a big question.
Discipline's a strong word, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
As a parent, I'm far too close to teenage years, but far enough away that I can take a breather. But especially with attitudes with teenage years in sports, with performances, it becomes their identity. They are the footballer, they are the top goal scorer and stuff like that. And one of the best coaches I know in football, he says it's a lot easier to teach kids when it goes wrong. When it goes right, they're like, I don't need to listen anymore. I just scored 3 goals. I'm the best at what it is. And it's accountability, right? It's, especially in team sports, it's the discipline of turning up on time. Otherwise, you're letting your teammates down. You're letting other people down. And it's that type of stuff that I would try and drive with those boys and girls that will be potentially moving on that pathway, that they need to be accountable for those actions, those mistakes, right? But in terms of discipline and how you instigate that and monitor that, it's a tough one. I think it's individual for the scenario, for the family. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all type of question, really.
Sebastian?
Adolescence is probably one of the most disruptive periods of time in a child's
And also one of the
life,
most alarming programs we've seen in the last couple of years, if you remember diving into that.
I think it's this phase where kids are like, who am I? You know, who am I? What do I, you know, what's my identity? Kids need purpose when they become a teenager more than ever.
Yes.
And so if you want to discipline your teen, that comes, you want them to have good discipline, that comes in the preteen years. You have to set them up for a foundation of that.
Yeah.
You need to give them the ability to say, I stand for this. This is my character. This is my identity. This is what I do. And give them a purpose. You know, little things you can do. The way in which you talk to a child as well, I feel so important. You know, we inspire through language. Whenever you talk to a young person, you're literally painting a picture of what they'll become. And that starts very young. You know, especially my little boy, I'll say to him, you know, I need your help. There's something I need you to help me with outside. I don't really need his help. I'm just moving something from here to there outside, whatever it is. But he'll jump up and feel so important. And you can carry that through. And by the time they're teenagers, they felt useful. They felt important. These sorts of things I found whenever I work with some of the best parents that I've met. First of all, it's parents who never really thought they had cracked it themselves because they're constantly questioning and asking, have I said the right thing? Have I been too strict? I think if you've got that energy, you're critiquing yourself, and it's not just the parent guilt, it's you care deeply about making sure this is right. Because believe it or not, a lot of parents don't ask that question. But really, those parents who have kind of built that discipline into their kids from a young age have been really focusing on purpose and responsibility, reliability, right? And then holding their children accountable. If you say to your child, here's the boundary, and you don't reinforce it, and it's typical that there's one parent
Guilty.
who does that, right? So that's what I was going to say.
I'm the good cop, if you like.
Yeah, so there's typically one parent who's like, I say it once and then I follow through with whatever the punishment was or the discipline was, right? But the other parent's a bit more lenient. And what you find is, you know, I find if you are following through, that discipline just comes naturally because the kids know there are repercussions to what they're doing, right?
But does discipline mean punishment? That's also it's also that as well, right?
This goes back to what we were talking about, framing failure. And I think discipline should be seen as a good thing. Do you know, there's loads of things that you can see circulating on social media right now, where whether you're doing it from, you know, whether it's kind of like an athlete's point of view, whether it's an entrepreneur who's, you know, starting a business or really scaling up, it's the idea of discipline should not be seen as going against you. It's working for you. And I think it's just the matter of reframing.
I speak with some of the older kids about currency, about within this partnership we have as coaches to them, the experience we have, the planning we have, and it's the same as parents. The currency back from their perspective is effort, and it's the discipline, the effort to turn up, effort to eat well, effort to go to bed, effort to do well in school. That's the discipline, right? And it's showing them the right and the wrong, but it's the punishment that is the critique on that discipline aspect.
So to jump on that, you know, knowing what's right and wrong, we're talking about having a moral compass, right? So it's instilling in your child what right or wrong actually is in the first place. They learn that by watching you. So you can't just say this stuff, you've got to do it as well. You know, which is kind of relieving, I think, as a parent. You know, if you want to raise great kids, disciplined kids or good kids who've got a, you know, good heart and they have a strong moral compass, have one yourself. Show those traits yourself. And ultimately, we all know, I think everyone here is a parent, right? When you become a parent, you're ultimately signing up to, you're getting a ticket to the most extreme self-development course, you know, and it's challenging, but ultimately if you work on yourself, your kids will follow suit.
Right. This is really resonating with our audience, and this conversation is flying by. The time is going. I might even ask permission if we can extend by an hour. But Richard's asked a question here, which really resonates with me as well. So my daughter is 9 years old, he says, and suffers from bullying at school with her female classmates. She's the smallest in the class. She's very good and confident at academic subjects, music, art, drama, which my daughter's very much the same. but not as confident when it comes to sports. The girls in the class are mentally bullying, keeping her away from the group. It all seemed to start when she was chosen as the star, because sometimes we have these school programs that receives positive praise. So what advice would you give Richard as a parent for his daughter in that? Is it move class, or is it work with his daughters?
Here's the challenging thing, and it's so difficult when you are a parent, your child's going through this, right? Because typically when we're in a reactive state, and most of the time when parents come to me when it comes to bullying, they're in a reactive state. My child's going through bullying, what do I do? It's hard to see through the noise to make the right call when you're in that situation. Whereas if you are kind of being proactive and preparing your child for the eventuality of it, it's slightly different. There are certain steps you can take. You can, first of all, focus on the perspective side of things, which I mentioned, which is changing and shifting why bullying actually occurs in the first place. That can take some time. The body language side, so presentation side, the role-playing side, what to say, short comebacks, to know exactly what to say. It's not a case of you just say to them, here's a one-word thing or a two-word thing that you can use to feel confident in the moment, to respond very quickly, to shut the bullying down. You have to practice that at home, right? So this is the role-playing game. So I would say make daily role-playing a part of your normal routine, right? Before school, after school, every day, spend 5 to 10 minutes where you take on the role of the bully, she takes on the role of your daughter, takes on the role of a victim of bullying, and then switch it over and have her say those prepared words back. Stop it, whatever, who cares, whatever it is. It's got to be short, repeatable, something they can actually use. The next thing is to kind of persevere in a separate community. It sounds like your daughter's already feeling very empowered academically. We need to, as human beings, have some sort of, we need to feel empowered in something. And if we don't, we appear vulnerable. So maybe there's a sport she can get into where she can feel more physically empowered. Martial arts is great, especially for a lot of kids who are used to doing academics and being on their own. Martial arts, it's basically self-development while you're in a community, right? So it's not a team sport, you're working yourself. And so for a character like what I'm hearing there, this could work really well. So a martial arts class where she's got that kind of individual self-development going on. And then just persevering. I think ultimately, it's a case of if you jump in and remove your child from the class, I guarantee you this will happen. The bullying will follow her into the next stage of her life. It could be the next class, or it could be adolescence, or it could be adulthood, or it could be in future relationships. Ultimately, bullying is like a dark cloud that just follows us until we have the courage to stand up to it. And the hardest thing about that is it starts off with the parent's courage.
I hope that helps, Richard. I'm going to ask the second poll question now, and then I want to try and prioritise all the questions. I think we've got more than enough to bring us home on this one. So the second poll question, please give us your thoughts. What do you most want your child to learn from failure, which is a really interesting one? And the options we've got: the confidence to try again, emotional resilience, problem-solving skills, self-belief, or independence. And I feel like one of these things is always there should be the F question, which is all of the above, but it'd be interesting to see. Out of those, which would you guess would be the priority? Confidence, emotional resilience, problem solving, self-belief, independence. They're all kind of interlinked, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
I'm going to throw a curveball, but I think failure...
Curveballs are welcome.
Failure for children is how the parents deal with that also. Okay? I think the first thing children will do when something goes wrong is they will look for their parents. And 90% of the time, that parent's face is behind a camera that they're filming. And there's there's an added pressure to that because they're going, oh, mum and dad are recording, better do well here. I didn't do well, damn it. And they look for that safe space, which is when you are born, when you become a parent, that skin on skin, you recognise that identity, the tone of the voice, the sense and stuff like that. They're going to look for that familiar face, and it's behind a screen. They can't see it. And it's how the parents deal with their children failing, right? And I think that's one of those things that we need to deal with. And it's, as Seb mentioned before, about showing that vulnerability as a parent when things go wrong, and sharing it with the kids that mum and dad aren't always super strong. Mum and dad have hard days. Mum and dad are tired. Mum and dad didn't really go to plan. The alarm didn't go off. So they understand that, oh, that's allowed. We're allowed to talk about this, right?
Let's see what the results are. Hopefully they'll come in a second. For you, Mesa, as well, want to bring it in?
I think to me, like we were saying, a lot of them are kind of interwoven
Yeah.
and then they're all relevant. But I think, Lee, what you said, that's something that I've also really kind of practiced daily. And that's whenever I mess up, I vocalize. I openly say, oh, I messed up, but you know what? It's okay. And it's just trying to kind of really get them to understand that, we're all human.
Yeah, we're allowed to say sorry as well, right? We're allowed to say sorry to our kids.
Too.
Yes.
That
apologize.
too.
For
My
Yes.
wife's not allowed to say sorry to me, apparently, but and now I've got to say sorry for that. So I will say sorry. I'm happy to say sorry. Right, into the audience questions. One from Alina, which I think is a thorny issue for many parents. How can I reason with my kids who ask for social media, especially with peer pressure? We don't want them to feel left out, but also understand the reason behind this decision. That's a difficult one.
Yeah, I mean,
But I think it's one of those where we have to stand strong as well.
Yeah, I mean, how much reasoning can you really do with a teenager who's desperate to have a phone, right? I think you got to accept the fact that this is probably going to be an imperfect decision, and you're not going to be the most popular person when you make it. At the end of the day, you're not there to be their friend. You're there to parent them, to guide them, to protect them. And there's a lot they don't know about. So how can you limit the damage? You can find other parents and other friends who have the same rules. Right. Ultimately, if they are seeing that this is normalized in some degree, suddenly you're not the villain of compared to their entire social group. A lot of it comes down to education, so they can kind of understand more of why you're doing this, why the rules exist. You have to be fairly careful with that. You don't want to scare them, but you need to give them practical advice, right?
I will say one thing, because obviously my daughter's 10 years old and she now wants to go to the park. She wants that little bit of independence. And as a parent, you're like, well, do I have to give her a phone? And if I give her a phone, then that gives her access to social media. It's interesting because Santa bought her for Christmas. So we've now got this watch which you can make phone calls on. There's no social media on it, but you can call your daughter on it, and it has a SIM card. You can track them. Oh, wow. They can only chat as well with the people that you've approved as well. So if budget allows, that there is a halfway house between.
It's a dumb phone, right? So if instead of a smartphone, you're giving your child the keys to a Ferrari. They don't know how to learn how to drive a car, right? So it's stepping stones, and then you give them that, and you see if they abuse the trust. Do they stick to the rules? Yeah. You give them an iPad. Watch your child with the iPad. Are they able to stick to the rules? Do they do anything they shouldn't do?
But you're almost putting, the apple in their hands. Yeah, that temptation.
But it's doing it in stages, right? Your job is not to eradicate this threat for the rest of their life. It's to prepare them for it. Yeah. And so if you look at it that way, it's like, what are the stepping stones so that they're ready? Giving your 8-year-old an iPhone isn't one of them.
No, I would totally agree with that. Terry's asked, how do you support your child, high school, when they feel frustrated when things are not working as they want, e.g. not great school grades? That's an important one as well, I'm sure, with your perspective, Lee.
Failure's different. Things can go wrong.
Yeah.
You've got everything right, everything's correct, everything's aligned, and sometimes it just doesn't go to plan. Or this failure, which I speak a lot with the kids and my kids as well, it's why did it go wrong? Can you actually look back? Did you go to bed on time? Spelling tests for my 8-year-old, it's one of the weekly biggest problems in the world. I only got 9 out of 10. Okay, is that a positive? We got one wrong. Why did we think we got one wrong? I probably could have done a little bit more practice. Yeah. And sometimes it's about that, right? It's about you can't get the result without the work that you put in. And I know it's cliche, the process, enjoy the process before the product, enjoy the journey, not the destination. But sometimes you have to, in those conversations in the car, what went wrong today? I didn't win. My daughters have had, I didn't win vortex throw. They had sports day yesterday. Why not? Probably could have done a little bit better. I was a bit tired. I didn't have my snack in time. Little things like that where they can actually go, I could make this a better result by actually preparing myself a little bit better.
That feels fairly endemic right now as well, isn't it? That kind of, well, if I don't get the result I want, I'll just stop that and move to the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we all know within a commercial or a corporate space or building a business, whatever, what culture is, right? We know the culture of an organization. If you're building a business, it's very important you develop the culture of the team. But do we ever focus on the culture of the family? And from my perspective, the culture of the family that I'm creating and one that we try and help our Warrior Academy families do is a culture of courage. And courage for me is the most important trait that you can teach a young person. Everything is downstream from courage. If you want to develop a child's confidence, develop their courage, because then they'll repeat the same thing. And so there's little ways you can actually develop a family culture of courage, which then changes how they approach failure, right? So one of them is mantras. So we have a mantra in my family of we do hard things. So it's like, why are we doing something difficult? I don't want to go on the long walk. I don't want to go to martial arts today. I don't want to do this. We do hard things. And it's just it becomes a normal part of, it's okay to do difficult things, to struggle and be uncomfortable a little bit, because that's what we do. Another little mantra is, when they go through something and they fail, school, academic, whatever it is, that kind of regroup, recover, retry.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what we do. And the first thing is, your child comes home from school, they're upset. The last thing they need you to do is to correct them and say, what lessons did we learn from this? That is what they need, right? But they need the separation from, I'm doing something difficult, I need to recover from this. So the regroup aspect of that would be bring the family together. Bring the community together, make them feel safe, supported. The next stage of that is recover. Calm down their nervous system, make sure they feel like they're in a more kind of abundant state of mind. They're not worried, not under threat. And then you can retry. And part of retry is understanding what could we do differently. So that kind of the mantras and the culture angle, I think, helps quite a lot.
You kind of answered a couple of questions that we had in there. Ijaz was asking, how do we help our children fail without them breaking their confidence, without losing confidence? And Monica was asking how to address a child that's an overachiever and is perseverant, but has a fear of failure. So there's a couple of questions there. Lee, because Sebastian was quite eloquent there.
Yeah, it's teaching them how to fail. It's an ongoing thing, and it's little things, and it's learning from the ones that have, right? Your Michael Jordans and stuff like that, and understand the journey on how long it took that he got let go from his basketball team at high school. It ends up being, and sometimes it's I haven't achieved it yet. There's opportunity, right? This is a long journey. We've got plenty of room for everyone, and sometimes everyone's in a rush. Everyone wants it yesterday. Social media shows it that it's quick and easy, right? Yeah. But it's just about once it starts to get harder, there's more opportunities to fail. Once that skill level gets a lot higher, there's more opportunities to fail. You just have to keep going with it. And I think it's always a parent thing on how you respond to your children failing as opposed to things going wrong. Because what is a failure? Is it losing a World Cup final, or is it forgetting your water bottle at school? In a 10-year-old's world, I'm going to get in so much trouble. I've left my water bottle, or I've lost another water bottle, which is my life in a nutshell. And it's going right. Or you, especially in those type of things where it's like, what did you do wrong? I put it down and I can't remember where it was. Okay, we move on. Did we learn anything? And it's that integrity to tell the truth, doing the right thing when no one's watching, which is something we try and do all the time. Those inches matter, where you put your foot on a line, make sure it's on that line every single time, and have that integrity to be honest.
Inches matter. Archan has asked a good question, which kind of resonates with me, because I'm 53 and my daughter's 10. And she's asking, what is your advice on the generation gap where there is a difference between the child of, say, between 40 or 50 years? Because obviously people are having children later in their lives. How do they bridge that gap? Thankfully, I'm deeply immature. So she's probably already more mature than me, frankly. So I think I've got a way of connecting with my daughter. But again, that generational gap is...
What, from a parent to a child?
Yeah, parent to a child.
I think it's, as a parent, be open to learn, right? As a coach, you've always got to upskill different dialogues, different communication pathways, how people... What you say isn't what people hear. And the opinions of others and all of that type of stuff. But it's, as a parent, don't be naive enough to think you know it all.
I actually learn a lot from my children, especially my youngest, who is going to be 11 in February. So she actually relishes when she's teaching me new stuff, whether it's kind of vocab, whether it's kind of what's happening and what's trending. But it's important as a parent to be able to still understand what's happening in their world. And even if it means trying to speak their language, you know, pick up on a few of these words, whether you sound like an idiot repeating them. But, you know, it's almost like you're breaking bread. You're actually getting to their level. So if you do want to impart anything, it's actually going to be received better because there's not that huge disparity because of that generational gap That's the way I feel works for me.
How important is it to be interested in what they're interested in? Because often, sometimes, they're either, whether it be they're into Star Wars, I got my daughter into Star Wars, yes, or Marvel, or Minecraft, or whatever it might be. How important is it to take an interest in
I think
what
it's
they're
an
interested
interesting one, because we have some of these conversations with parents where there may be a musical parent, but their child may have gone down the sporting route. And it's about connecting the dots in terms of the sense of vulnerability on stage, taking the winning kick in a game or whatever sport it may be. But it's just about just being interested in their interest. You don't need to know what they're doing, but you need to be interested in them and how much fun they're having. Are they enjoying it? The failures, the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations of teams and coaches in preparation. Show interest in them and where they're going on that journey. You don't need to know all the rules. As you said, you might need to know the lingos and the popular players and the uniforms and stuff like that. But showing an interest in them enjoying something holds a lot more value than you trying to learn everything to be almost wise enough to teach them and become the sideline coach, so to speak.
Time's against us. Tony's asked the question, my child doesn't want us to ask her about her studies. She feels uncomfortable and changes topic if we try to ask her about her studies. How to handle that?
I would say build connection first. Don't go straight in. If she's uncomfortable, you asking her about her studies, it sounds like it's a performative thing, right? So she's worried you're judging her on her performance of her studies. So all of that stuff comes way later. You know, that's like step 3. Step 1 and 2 would be building a lot of connection time. I guarantee if this particular parent just spent more time connecting with their child without judging, that would really change over time. She'd be more open to talk about it.
I've learned one thing on the road, having had a teenage boy and now my girl going into it as well, particularly with the teenagers, and I don't know if this resonates with you. Sometimes you'll ask them and they don't want to talk, but those moments when they kind of come out of their room and they want to talk to you is the time to lean in and maximize that time rather than...
If you're asking the question, if you're willing to ask the question, you've got to be prepared for the answer. And especially with kids, if you do get that opportunity where they invite you in to their space, so to speak, you can't be distracted. You can't
That's
be,
true.
phone down.
I've got the cookers on or whatever in. But also at the same time, it's learning how to ask better questions. You don't ask, how was the maths test? You evolve the question into, how was your day? And maybe avenue, and it could circle back to the answer you want, but sometimes it will come 2 or 3 days later. If things go wrong in sport, you kind of go, I'm going to take a little bit of a breather. It's like that email that you shouldn't send straight away. You close the laptop, you walk away and go, right, I'm going to reframe this now. And sometimes they might just circle back a couple of days later and go, oh, the maths test was all right, actually, Dad.
Yeah.
Don't be in a rush to get the answer, and don't be in the rush to get solve the problem, so to speak.
Or sometimes not even asking any questions, right? Sometimes just being comfortable enough to have that quietness, that silence, right? Creating space for them to speak. And we feel like as parents, we need to quickly jump in with a solution or a question or something. Like we need to instigate some sort of conversation. But if you're just there with them.
We're not very good with silence in general these days, are we? No. At least on this podcast, but this podcast.
That's kind of the point. Yeah, kind of it'd be weird if we were.
I worked with a couple of students, and it's finding out where they best express themselves. Some like this, almost across a desk conversation, or some will go for a walk around the AstroTurf at school. My daughters, my youngest, we go for a walk of an evening with the dog, and I cannot shut her up. But if I ask her in the car, she's very much But suddenly that safe space, wherever it may be, if you can find that, like you said, you go out for walks, it's almost like a shoulder to shoulder. We're walking together so we can share together, as opposed to it's an interview. Tell me the answer right now.
You go on a 40-minute walk, and the best stuff you're going to hear comes at the very end. Yeah, you know, it's after that connection's built and they're both calm.
We're almost out of time. Mesa, any last questions or any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, to be honest, I found this to be extremely insightful, but then also validating, because there is a few of some of the things that we've touched upon that I'm thinking, okay, I'm doing that already. So yes, thank you.
So we are kind of out of time. Sebastian, if we didn't manage to get to everybody's questions, and I think we tried our very, very best, how can people reach out and post some more questions or connect with you?
Yeah, just DM me on Instagram, seb.bates, or you can search for the Warrior Academy on Google.
Lee?
Same. Instagram, Lee M. Ryan on Instagram. just reach out. I'll be more than happy to connect.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us on our first episode of the year. It's been a powerful conversation for me. Thank you very much for interacting. Thank you for all your questions. We can tell it's a powerful topic for you. Please remember, after the webinar closes, you will be asked for your feedback. We do consider feedback to be a gift, so please respond to that. And remember, go back and check out some amazing episodes from 2025. There's loads in there. Just search for Connect for Health on YouTube or on the podcast channels. Go and listen again and listen back to this episode as well, because I think it's going to be fantastic. Once again, from Connect for Health, thanks very much, Lee. Thanks, Sebastian, for joining us.
Thank you.
Mesa, always great to see you.
Thank you, Scott.
Again. And thank you very much, Rufus. We'll see you again soon.